McDonald, time's are ticking. Every heart is beating true and blue for the red and blue. After 57 long years, the Demons are premiers in 2021. Extraordinary stuff. And McDonald kicks the goal. Delirious fans and players. Melbourne have won.
After 57 long years, the Melbourne Demons are premiers of the AFL again, as I welcome Liam while we go over their 2021 season.
Yeah, it was pretty much almost a perfect season for all these fans. You couldn't really point out any negatives. So there was quite a few to pick from pretty much every week. But which was their best win you saw them have this season? Which one stood out the most?
If we're going off a whole game, then I've got to go the Geelong Cats in the prelim, 4-quarter performance. But if we're going off, I guess, a half, got to go the grand final. The second half was the best half of football I've seen a team play in years upon years. So I'd probably lock in their prelim against the Cats, though.
I'll go with the grand final. I believe they played pretty much half of the second quarter. I believe also the Dogs dominated, but just in general, that second half, as you said, they kicked 16 goals to 1, and to do that in the grand final against the Dogs, who were the second best team all year, just to pull that off was absolutely ridiculous. So that was the best win for me that they had.
Now, what was their worst loss of the season? Obviously, there wasn't many to pick from. But of the 4 or so off the top of my head, 5 maybe that they had, what was their worst one?
I've gone back to around 13 in their loss against Collingwood. They went down by 3 goals from what was Nathan Buckley's last game. I just went with that because I think it's losing to Collingwood. We all know they're not the greatest. And Melbourne, we all knew how good they were. Just to go down on the Queen's birthday, no one expected this. And didn't really play the greatest of games from memory. I don't really think they played all 4 quarters, if a half, if that. So I've gone with the game against Collingwood. What did you go with?
I went 3 weeks prior to that, back in round 10 against the Adelaide Crows in Adelaide. It was a tight match the whole way through. The highest lead was only 3 goals in the D's favour. And it was their first loss of the season. It wasn't really a bad loss in terms of margin. Like, we knew they were going to lose eventually to someone. Just Adelaide wouldn't have been the team that I picked. That I think they went in about $6 favourites from memory. So I wouldn't have picked that. Just chucked it in. I guess in the defence for their loss for Collingwood had a lot more reason to play hard, a lot more heart to put in. So I just went with Adelaide for that one.
Yeah. Very good. We'll now move on to the best and fairest. And I don't think this one was too hard to pick out. I think there was 3 very good standouts, but who did you have?
In at 3, I had Gawn, the almost 19 touches a game, the 32 hitouts, 4.5 clearances, 5 marks. Self-explanatory. Captain, dominated the prelim. What else could we say? He's a best ruckman in the comp. I've said it for 3 years now. In at 2, I had Christian Petrarca, the 29 touches a game, 7 inside 50s, 6.5 clearances, 1 goal, 4 tackles, 538 meters gained, just monster numbers. He is a bull. He's my favorite player in the competition for a reason. He is just an absolute bull. And we saw that on grand final day. And number 1 was 3rd in the Brownlow with 31 votes, Clayton Oliver. Given we had the same 3, I'll get you to take him through the stats.
Yeah, so we all know how much a good year Oliver had. He had the 31 touches, 5 inside 50, 7.5 clearances, 5 tackles, 421 meters gained. You could just go on forever about this bloke. He is an absolute superstar. I had him for my Brownlow. No doubt, I reckon he may even win it next year. Also, him and the Bond would be very close again. But he's just getting better and better every year. He's going to come back better next year. Him, Petrarca, and Gawn in that midfield, they're going to be pretty much nearly unstoppable. So that's why I had him in at 1, and I also had Petrarca and Gawn at 3. which was very hard to argue to anyone else to sneak into that top three.
We'll now move on to the most surprising player. So, who exceeded your expectations or did not quite reach them?
I went with the bloke who only played the 7 games of the season, and he goes by the name of Jacob Bowie. As I just said, he played the 7 games, but he won all 7 of them. He has a 100% win rate, and he just did his bit. He averaged 17 touches a game, about the 2 inside 50s. But he was just, I was watching all the games they played, and he just rarely missed a kick. He was very elite, and the fact that he's only played 7 games absolutely blew my mind. I thought he had played at least half the season, but I went back and I remember that his debut game was against West Coast over there in Perth, and I believe he got the Rising Star nomination that week in his debut game. So he was my most surprising player. I didn't have many, but for a young boy, he's only 19, and the 7 games he played, he was just absolutely elite in my eyes. So who'd you go with?
I chucked in big backup ruckman Luke Jackson. Only played the 6 games last year in 2020, but played all except 1. So he quadrupled his game count this year. He was the perfect backup to Max Gawn. He had the 13 disposals, the 3 marks, just over half a goal, 10 and a half hit outs a game. He was, as I just said, like literally the perfect 1-2 punch. And personally, for me, he was better than Max Gawn on grand final day.
Yeah.
Gawn was quiet for his standards. And Luke Jackson stood up. And what more can you ask for a 20-year-old ruckman in his second season?
Yeah. Now, there's not much that came to the top of my head for this, but what do they need to do for next year? What do they need to do practically?
Nothing at all. They're perfectly set. They're flag favourites for me by a country mile already. There's nothing they can do to up their game. They are going to be very good for the next many years, because as soon as Gawn's gone in for 3 or 4 years, they've still got Luke Jackson coming through. Like, what more can go wrong? Oliver and Petrarca are what, 24, 23, 25, something in there?
Yeah.
They still got 6-7 years ahead of them. But what can go wrong?
Exactly. I reckon when I backed also added the Luke Dunstan to boost their midfield. So I think that there's no reason why they can't go back to back. I'll be probably surprised if they didn't, to be honest with you. So I reckon just run it back, have a good preseason. Hopefully don't get any big injuries. Touch wood, nothing like that happens, but I'm sure they can go back to back very easily.
Now, your predictions for 2022, I think this is a fairly straightforward one, and we both had them in the same spot. Go check out our predictions video if you haven't already, but reveal that spot for us.
I have them going back-to-back minor premiers. There's no doubt they're the best team in the comp in my eyes. The Bulldogs, they're still not there yet, so I've got them going back-to-back minor premiers and finishing on top of the ladder yet again. How about yourself?
Yep, same. First, not going to budge. Honestly, I reckon they can have a better season than they did this year. They are that prime and that ready. They're only going to keep improving. It's a scary sight.
Sure.
And as for the report grade, the final little segment, how can you not give them an A+? They were seen to be on the fringe of the 8, potentially 8th, potentially 9th or 10th. No one saw them in the top 4. No one saw them finishing first, and no one saw them winning a final, let alone 3, including the grand final.
Yeah.
So A+ times infinity for me. That was an incredible season, and it has to be capped off.
Yeah. If I could give them anything higher than an A+, I 100% would, but obviously you can't. So an A+ is just, he summed it up beautifully. No one expected them to finish minor premiers, yet win a grand final, win a final, as he said, and just to do all that in one season, it was just absolutely brilliant. So an A+ is the only real answer you can have for their report grade.
So I think that wraps it up for the Melbourne Demons season review. Let us know down below where you would rank them. I would suspect you'd be a little bit crazy to not rank them in an A plus as we have, because boy oh boy, they did nothing wrong when it mattered. So that's it for the Demons for this year. That's it for our team reviews. Stay tuned over the coming weeks as we prepare for the draft and a little bit of off-season shenanigans. Otherwise, we will see you around. Thank you.
See you later.